Okay, welcome back. Today we will discuss interest aggregation, which is a stage after interest articulation. So after people expressed what they want to the decision makers, now certain groups of people need to come up with policy packages. But before we can discuss interest aggregation, we need to know at least two institutional features, and they are electoral systems and party systems. So, electoral systems first. The electoral law determines how voter choices are translated into election outcomes, meaning that even if the same voters vote the same way, different electoral laws may produce different election outcomes. Okay? The United States, Britain, and Canada, among others, have single-member district plurality election rule, commonly known as SMD, or in Korean, 소선거구제. And under this rule, country is divided into many electoral districts. In the US, there are 435 electoral districts. In Korea, the number of districts has fluctuated, and as far as I can recall, the last time in the last National Assembly election last year, the number of electoral districts was 246. Okay? And in each district, the candidate who has more votes than any other, that is a plurality, wins the election in that district. And this system is often called first past the post, a horse racing term because the winner need only finish ahead of others without having to win a majority of the votes. So apparently, I don't know how many of you have gone to the horse racing ground. Maybe some of you have. I haven't. But apparently, if this is the ground, the horses starts here, they run around the ground, and apparently there's a large post here. And looking from this direction, whichever horse whose nose touches the post first is the winner. Okay? So, because of the horse racing term like this, an SMD plurality rule is also called the first past the post system. And so basically, you don't need to win 50% of the votes. You just need to finish first. Well, we are expecting a midterm election in April, right? In the now famous district of Nowonbyong, right? And a hypothetical example could be a candidate called An may receive, say, 46% of the votes, and candidate called He, right? He may get 45%. And who is the third candidate? The wife of Mr. No? Kim. Okay, Kim gets Give me the number. Well, 100 minus 9%. You guys are good at numbers, right? You guys good at 산수, right? but not 수학, right? Anyway, so, if the election results are like this, even though this An guy did not receive the majority of votes, and even though there's only 1% differential between the two, An is still elected because he finished first. Okay? So this is the defining feature of SMD plurality rule. Well, I said earlier that countries such as the Britain, US, and Canada adopt the electoral system of SMD plurality, and note the fact that they are all English-speaking nations. Okay? Then how about other countries? Other, say, so-called Western democracies. Most of the other Western democracies use some form of proportional representation, or PR, or in Korean, 비례대표제, right? And in these systems, the country is divided into a few large districts, and the competing parties offer a list of candidates rather than a single candidate. So each party put up many candidates, not just one, and the number of legislative representatives a party wins depends on the overall proportion of the votes it receives. Okay, I said earlier that there are several large districts in countries that adopt proportional representation. So let's just imagine a electoral district called 경기. Okay, let's say that Gyeonggi province is one electoral district, and hypothetically, let's assume that Gyeonggi elects 10 National Assembly persons. Okay? If that is the case, Party A put up a list of 10 candidates, and they actually name number 10 candidates, 1 through 10. Party B put up another list, 1 through 10. Party C, another list, 1 through 10. And let's say there's a party D as well. And it turns out that in the province of Gyeonggi, Party A received 30% of the votes. Party B received 20% of the votes. 50. Party C received 40% of the votes. And Party D received 10% of the votes. Okay. This is a hypothetical election results. And based on the proportional representation, Party A will be given 3 seats, meaning that I said that we are electing 10 National Assembly persons in Gyeonggi. So A will be given 3 seats, and the actual representatives will be numbers 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So you need to be ranked high to become a National Assembly person. Party 2 received 20% of the votes, so numbers 1 and 2 become members of National Assembly. Okay? party C did well and got 40% of the votes. Therefore, 1, 2, 3, and 4, they become members of the legislature. D received only 1%, so only number 1 guy becomes the 국회의원. Okay? Now, this sort of system will have several electoral districts if the country is large. But there are very small countries that adopt proportional representation. So, in countries like Netherlands and Israel, which are small countries, there is only 1 electoral district. The whole country is an electoral district. Okay? And in a country like that, a party receiving 5% of the vote would be awarded 5% of the seats in the national legislature. So what matters is what you receive in the national, nationwide, which happens to be the electoral district as well. Okay? What sort of electoral system does Korea have for the National Assembly election? SMD and PR. So the Korea has a mixed system, right? Mixed system of SMD and PR, but primarily SMD, right? I mentioned earlier that there were 240 some SMD districts, meaning that about 50 some members were elected in proportional representation, or the party list. The Koreans call it 정당 명부제, right? Now, at this point, we need to discuss this person, Dubereje's law. Heard of the name before? Dubereje? No? Okay. A French political scientist. And Dubereje's law reflects the tendency for a plurality SMD electoral rules to create two-party systems in the legislature, while proportional representation generally generate multi-party systems. Well, if you remember, in this course, an arrow indicates what? Causal relations, right? Therefore, what Dubereje is arguing is SMD causes two-party system, and PR causes multi-party system. So if you adopt an SMD as your electoral system, then the chances are your country will have a two-party system. Whereas if you adopt PR as your electoral system, your country will have multi-party system. Okay? Now, in single-member district system, smaller parties that receive a minority of the vote across many districts receive little or no representation in the parliament. Now, think about it. In an SMD, you get one seat when you win in one district. So you have to come in first in that district, right? If you are a small party with little support across the nation, then it would be very hard to win the first place in any district, right? Therefore, you will be underrepresented. You know. Now, in Britain, in the 1997 election, for example, 17% of the electorate voted for a third party called Liberal Democratic Party. Okay. But the party received only 7% of the seats in the parliament. Okay. So, vote total 17, but seat total was only 7. So in SMD, small parties do poorly. And this discourages politicians from forming more parties. Imagine if there are 2 strong parties already in your country, and you are trying to establish a new party. When you establish a new party, you are not going to win majority of seats right away, right? And in each district, probably you finish third. If the electoral system is SMD, then your legislative representation would be very poor. Therefore, you simply don't do it. It doesn't make sense to create a small third party. And this is what we call wasted vote thesis. That is, a party for the third party is pretty much wasted vote, what Koreans call 사표, right? Let's come up with a hypothetical example. Let's assume that we are all Americans living in the US. Roughly speaking, the proportion of blacks in America is about 18% of the population. 18%. Let's assume that all 18% are distributed evenly across all electoral districts in the US. The reality is there are more blacks living in large cities and few blacks live in the countryside, but let's forget that. Let's assume that all 18% live evenly in all electoral districts. And somehow blacks succeeded in collective action and created a third party, okay? Only for the blacks. And let's call it what? Black Power Party, BPP, okay? So now we have a third party. Democratic Party, Republican Party, and then a third party called BPP. Let's assume that all blacks vote for the BPP in the US. When blacks unite, other racial groups they get threatened and try to get away from the BPP. So let's further assume that the rest of the population do not vote for BPP. So they either vote for Democratic Party or Republican Party. All blacks vote for BPP. Now, after the elections in November, out of 435 seats in the House of Representatives, BPP, representing 18% of the population, will receive how many seats? I cannot hear you. If the electoral system is SMD. Louder. You. Louder. I can hear you. 아무 이석도 못 받아요. That was Korean, right? Yeah. He said 0. Anyone else? How about 18% multiplied by 435? 35? One student said 0 seats, and the other said 35. Anyone else? You just said 35, right? so half of him said 35, and the other half of him said 79. Okay. Could you explain the rest of the class how you got the number 79? Microphone, please.
제가 정확히 들었는지는 모르겠는데 미국 의회 총 의원석이 435석이라고 말씀하셨죠.
That's correct.
그 중에서 이제 흑인들이 총 18%가 미국을 구성하고 있다고 했으니까 18%가 모두 그 정당에다가 투표를 했을 경우에 435개 의원석 좌석 가운데 18%를 그 정당이 BPP였나요? 예, 그 정당이 가져가기 때문에 그걸 계산해 보면 예, 저것과 비슷한 수치가 나오는 것 같은데 제가 정확히 계산을 못한 것 같아서 예, 한번 따져봐야 할 것 같습니다.
Okay, the rest of the class. There is a correct answer out of these three. So how many of you believe that the BPP will win 79 seats? You, okay, one. And how about 35? No one? How about 0? Some of you. And some of you do not have an opinion. Okay? Well, the answers in the fact that the USA adopts SMD plurality, right? And we earlier assumed that the 18% of the blacks living in the United States are evenly divided in each district. So in all districts, there are 18% blacks. So 100 minus 18 would be what? 82, right? And which way you divide 82? In any way, right? The first place will get, well, more than 18, right? There is no way that first place will get less than 18, right? Meaning that in each district, either Democratic Party or Republican Party will finish first. And there will be no district out of 435 in which the BPP will finish first. So although this party received 18% of the votes nationwide, there would be no black representative in the US Congress under the current system of SMD. Okay? Well, the reason why we do see some blacks in the US House of Representatives, of course, is that blacks are concentrated in some areas, right? Rather than evenly distributed across nation. Again, defining feature of the SMD. So Dubereje's law is basically electoral system causes party system. Okay. And if you remember earlier in the semester, a theory is about causal relationship, right? So we do have a causal relationship here. So we do have a theory of how party system is determined. Okay?